Hello, Happy New Year, and welcome to episode 49 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. In today's show, Jeff from the blog Magical Pursuit will be back to finish our conversation about our recent visit to Kennedy Space Center. You can hear the first part of that talk on episode 48. After that, my wife Courtney will be on the show for a dining review of our recent visit to Boma at Disney's Animal Kingdom Lodge. As you probably know by now, I am a travel agent with Ear to There Travel. To contact me, shoot me an email at rick@eartotheretravel.com or call 727-507-3123. My services are always 100% free to you, and I know Walt Disney World, Disneyland, Universal Orlando Resort, and many other travel locations. Make sure to follow me on social media for videos, blogs, pictures, live streams, vlogs, and even giveaways in the near future. Facebook.com/eartothererick, Twitter.com/Rick_ear, Instagram.com/RickEar2 and Twitter.com/TGTT podcast. Also, like and subscribe to the Tall Guy Talks Travel YouTube channel. We're going to build this thing this year in 2022. You're definitely going to want to be a part of it. Let's get things started by welcoming back our good friend Jeff from the blog Magical Pursuit. When we left off our conversation last week, we had taken a bus from the Kennedy Space Center visitor area to the Apollo Saturn V Center. Jeff, why don't you continue our conversation by telling everybody about something emotional that really surprised us at the Apollo Saturn V Center?
It was not something expected. The length of the rocket is enormous. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's a giant thing. And you can walk the length of it because this area the space is just giant that is surrounding it. And there's little kiosks and stuff like that talking about different things here and there and artifacts from the space era and all of that. Anyway, at the very end of it is a kind of a memorial to Apollo 1, which blew up on the pad, and it was, commemorating the sacrifice of the people involved. And it's just a very somber, very, very reflective area. You go in, it's pretty quiet, and they have pieces from those individuals' lives that were there. Just, you can see their, backpack for school and all of these things. You're just reflecting on that 3 men, they were the start of it. This was the start of the Apollo mission. We kind of developed the rocket. We kind of developed this. We kind of developed that. And now we're going in the push to really, we're sending people to the moon. We're going to do it. This is, the first couple missions were to just see what it was like and gather information. And so we go through that. There was this, just a regular museum area of all of this stuff. And you make a turn, and there was just a sign on the wall and this orange metal grating. Very small, very, like, you're standing there and it's very your dimensions pretty much. There's not much wiggle room to stick your arms out or anything. And it is the walkway that took the Apollo 11 astronauts from the elevator up to their. So when the rocket is standing straight up, the part where the people are at the very top. And so an elevator takes them from where the launch pad actually is all the way up. And then there's a walkway to go into the module. And it was the one that was from the Apollo 11. And I had to go through the whole thing a couple times to walk across it, because it was one of the most intense emotional experiences of my life, that to know that was it, to know that I did that walk too. And to then, because of that, you reflect on, this was, for those men, this could have been the last time that they were on Earth. It could have ended just as we showed where this came from, where the Apollo mission came from. This could have been it. This could have been their last steps. They got into the console, and then that's it. To know that, and to know that there was potential for them launching themselves into forever, the history, the memory, all of that just come rushing in as you take those same steps that they did. And it was, like I said, it's probably one of the most intense experiences of my life. And it's just hanging out in the back of a building. It's just, to know that it's there. It's wild. I don't have words for it. It was just incredible.
This was the last part of Earth they stepped on, and their next steps were on the moon. That is undescribable. I did as well. I walked across it a number of times, and I just took video of my feet just being on this section. You don't even think about the last place they stepped. Like, it's not even something that comes to your mind when you're watching a documentary about it or something. And then you're just confronted with it in a place that you had no idea it was going to be there. To describe how out of place something of this magnitude was in the location of the building where it stood, it's impossible.
After that building, and just like I said, the immense size and the scope and the scale and the kind of emotions, for me anyway, being in there, we walked outside and kind of tried to get a good look at the launch pad, and then on the way we saw this like garden. What they did was they planted a tree for every Apollo mission. It was a really cool thing. Picture like a figure eight, and then on the outside there was a tree for each mission that was planted, and then it had information about the mission. It had the mission patch, of course, the most famous one being the Apollo 11 one that everyone has seen, and all the other ones no one's ever seen before, really. And then there was this just giant statue to the three men who went to the moon on Apollo 11, sponsored by Rocket Mortgage. It was the weirdest product placement I think I might have ever seen. It was just, I get the joke, like, Rocket Mortgage, get it. That wasn't posted there, but I mean, like, I understood it, but just, it was the weirdest thing because it's this, the idea of the area is a very reflective and contemplative, what's the word I'm looking for?
Contemplative.
That's it. Thank you. It was very weird because it was you could tell that this was meant to be a serene and contemplative space, but all I could focus on was the statue that said Rocket Mortgage. It was interesting, but I mean, it was a cool statue. It was very cool, and it looked great standing there. But from there, we went to see Atlantis.
Yeah, the Space Shuttle Atlantis is back at the main Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center, so we took a bus with a much less enthusiastic host this time to see the Space Shuttle Atlantis, which has flown numerous flights to space and then came back and was reused again. We saw an interesting video about just having that idea to send something up and return it and then do it again, which, you know, you just think of how many really good ideas have to go into this, and somebody having to have this idea, wait, why don't we just use the same shuttle multiple times? Like, why don't we find a way to launch things off of a reusable launching structure? And you see the actual Space Shuttle Atlantis, and the gravity of that can't be expressed.
One of the things they talked about in the videos was just going to space is a difficult thing. Returning from space is even harder. And for a million reasons, but one of them is heat. And just the re-entry is just so stressful on anything. To think that you're going to reuse it is just like mind-blowing. It was a revolutionary idea. I mean, picture the one-time use microwavable plate that comes with a TV dinner, and okay, now we need to use it 700 more times, and just the what has to go into it. And that was the thing that blew me away when I first got to see the ship itself. Was it looked like a puzzle, because the outside is tiny. I mean, I don't want to say tiny, but like, you know, a 3x5 card sized plate of material to, you know, vent heat away and all of that insulation, let's say. And it's covered the entire outside of the ship. And I mean, obviously there's a reason. It's easy to replace a tiny thing than it is to replace the whole outer shell of the ship. But to see that in your face, and as a kid growing up and seeing the shuttle, and I didn't even know there was multiple shuttles, let alone this one. I never heard the name Atlantis before. So to know that they retired them after a while, and it always looked like the same white ship with black on the outside and an American flag on the side. Like, that's what the shuttle was to me. So to see it there and to see how textured it was, to me, it always looked like an airplane. It always looked smooth, like just one sheet of smooth metal across the side. And to see the texture of it, and then to know that each individual piece of texture mattered, to know that it was there for a reason. Because if it wasn't there, the thing wouldn't fly, the thing wouldn't come back, the thing wouldn't take off, whatever reason it had. Just to know that the level of engineering know-how that went into this is just incredible.
And each of those little 3x5 sections had an individual serial number on the outside because they're not worried about the aesthetic of this. They want to be able to look at anything they need to change, be able to read right off what they need to go get in the other room and replace it. And that was so cool because, like you said, when you would see it on television, it just looked like one big ship. It didn't look almost like a Lego ship made with all these little different sections, but each one had its own serial number on it, and you could read that there were serial numbers on them, and all of that meant something to someone somewhere. There was a file that listed each and every one where that person could get a new one if it needed to be replaced, and that's the level of detail that you just have to admire.
And that is required for the job that that ship has to do. I mean, that is a very expensive device. It is carrying human lives. It has to work. And not just, oh, I need a little air in my tires has to work. It has to function perfectly or there's disaster. And we've seen the disaster, and there's one of the wildest, just punch you in the gut experiences was there in seeing. I'll let you take over.
So when you see the space shuttle Atlantis, you walk into the room at the very top of this large building. And then the exhibit continues as you're walking down to the bottom, and you're under Atlantis at this point. And just back off in a corner, there is a tribute to the Challenger. And people about my age, this was the first major news event I remember. I remember having like nightmares where I thought I was seeing it happen in the sky. You know, because when you're a kid and you don't 100% put these things into context or whatever. Like, I remember the Challenger exploding, and you see items much like the Apollo 1 display that Jeff was talking about earlier from the astronauts who went up in the Challenger, and then you come around the bend and you turn right, and there is a piece of the Challenger. It is so emotional for somebody who remembers it the way I remember it. That was sort of when this aura of space travel really, obviously no pun intended, and maybe this isn't the right wordage, but came crashing to the ground. Like, it was so inspiring to go into space, and then this happened, and all of a sudden you really put into perspective how dangerous it is to try to go to space. And seeing that piece of the Challenger was a punch in the gut. Exactly like you said, a punch in the gut.
It's such a interesting contrast. We came from the Saturn V, which was this gigantic rocket. It was a fuel tank engine and a tiny space for these people to sit. They were sitting under tons and tons of rocket fuel and went to the moon. And it was just the most, one of the most amazing human achievements, but certainly one of the most absolute, almost pure American achievements. Just, you felt proud to be part of a country that was able to do this. You didn't terribly grasp that these were just three men sitting on top of tons of rocket fuel. It was just, they went up and they did it, and go us and go them, yay. And then you see Challenger and what happens when one tiny thing goes wrong or one little thing goes wrong. And it puts into perspective how fragile all of it is, because it's not a guarantee anymore that you're going to go up, you're going to go do the mission, you're going to accomplish it, and you're going to come home and you're going to be loved by the world. It's not that. It is a very dangerous, it's a very serious task that these people sign up for. And I don't have the right words, and there aren't right words for it, but like it felt the same way when I first got to see a piece of the Berlin Wall. It was like, I don't have words for what I'm looking at right now. I have feeling. I can feel it. I can feel everything that went into the moment that created what I'm looking at. But I don't have words. I can't speak. I just stare at it and just look at it and just um um even right now it's taking words away from me. Just you just have to experience it. It's just an experience to be that close to something that etched into history.
And I honestly think that's probably the best place to end this episode, with the emotions of seeing everything that went with the Challenger, but then seeing all the inspirational things as well. But just reminding yourself that with every inspirational moment, every footstep on the moon, came tireless work from so many individuals. You'll never know their names. They're not making it into the history books. The sacrifice of the people who passed away trying to reach for this goal. And it kind of gets back to that speech that Kennedy made at Rice when he said, you know, we choose to go to the moon and do the other things not because they're easy, but because they're hard. And that is so on display at the Space Center. Just awesome. I'm so happy we got to experience it. And I'm also happy that I went with you, Jeff, because I think you have such an appreciation for the same grandiose visions of the space program.
Absolutely. Like I said before, there's like the two groups of people. There's the people that are fascinated by animals and life, you know, the miniature up to the massive on Earth. Just there's those people that just love biology and chemistry and all of that stuff. And then there's people that just stare into the blank void of space and just wonder and just marvel. And, you know, to look at the moon and to know that it is very far away, not far away like Maine is to us, but very, very far away. And all that comes from that the light has to go from the sun to the moon and reflect back at us. And to know that even though it's so far away, it's in constant motion. It is in constant motion around Earth. To know that affects time. Just all of these things, because the moon is where it is. And we went there one time. We went there a couple times. We were able to go there and come back. All of that is just that's what I marvel at. That is what I love to think about. And that's what, you know, is the things that when I'm 3 a.m, just that's what I'm thinking about. And just to know that there is so much out there that we'll never even know about. That fact doesn't stop us from exploring. We will constantly reach to know as much as we can about the world and about the universe.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Absolutely. You have a good one.
You can hear the first part of that conversation on episode 48 of the podcast. We're going to move on to a dining review from On Property at Walt Disney World with my wife, Courtney. Thanks for joining us, Court.
Nice to be here.
On Christmas Day, Courtney and I decided to celebrate the holiday by going to Walt Disney World, and one of the things we did was we had a dinner reservation at Boma at Disney's Animal Kingdom Lodge. We actually really enjoy going to Animal Kingdom Lodge for the holiday. It's a resort you don't go to very often because it's a little bit out of the way if you're a local and you're at Walt Disney World. Unless you have a particular reservation or you mobile order something, you can't really go there by parking. You'd have to take a lot of Disney transportation. So we don't get there all that often, but their holiday decorations are awesome. So we wanted to make sure to do that as part of our day celebrating at Walt Disney World. So first of all, Courtney, why don't you talk a little bit about the decorations?
Right. Well, the decorations just complement the theming so well. African theming, orange colors is what I noticed a lot. And then they were running the fireplaces, and that was just beautiful.
Unfortunately, it was so crowded that we weren't able to get a spot at one of the fireplaces, but those people definitely seemed like they were really enjoying their holiday sitting there and making some really good memories. So a weird thing happened that sometimes happens with Disney IT, and something got messed up with our dining reservation. So the first thing we have to say is that Candace from York, Pennsylvania, the cast member at the check-in desk, was really, really good. She went in, she found everything that had to do with our reservation because it wasn't showing up in My Disney Experience, and she found us and was able to fit us in for our reservation. However, we had a little bit longer of a wait, and we decided to see if we could check out any animals on the savannah. This is where it gets really cool, right, Court?
Absolutely. So we thought we could just try and see any animals that we could, such as zebras or giraffes. And as it turns out, they actually had night vision goggles for the guests, including us who were guests as having reservations for the restaurant dining experience. There were wildlife experts who had 3 different sets of goggles, and they would help you with these goggles per group or per family. And we were able to see a giraffe right in front of us. It was so cool to be able to see these animals on the savannah through the night vision goggles. Very neat experience.
As Walt Disney World regulars, we end up getting spoiled. We have been to Animal Kingdom Lodge a number of times just to look around and mobile order things. So we're used to seeing the giraffes there. We're used to seeing the giraffes on Kilimanjaro Safari at Animal Kingdom, the park. There was something about seeing the exact same giraffe through night vision goggles that was so much cooler than those other experiences. I really loved it. That was fun. Just a nice little treat that we wouldn't have had if our dining reservation didn't get messed up in My Disney Experience. So sometimes you just have to make the best of a weird situation. But then we got seated at Boma. This is an all-you-care-to-enjoy buffet-style restaurant. And there are some very unique items that are African and Middle Eastern flavored. So there's a lot of stuff for the adventurous eater. I think the first thing I want to cover, however, is even if somebody in your party isn't an adventurous eater, they have some items for them. There was mac and cheese. I made a point of trying out the mac and cheese because I wanted to see if somebody who didn't want to try some of these more unique items would be able to have a good time. Obviously, some of the more expensive restaurants have really fancy mac and cheeses. There are lobster mac and cheeses on property. But if you're talking about just a regular, traditional American-style macaroni and cheese, this is some of the best macaroni and cheese on property. You're going to like it. If you're going with a kid who doesn't like to try a lot of different stuff or unique stuff, the kid's going to enjoy that mac and cheese, and it's all you care to enjoy, so they can just keep getting more and more of it. There's also penne and marinara sauce, so that's another option that's not too adventurous. There's what amounts to as chicken nuggets, so there's a lot that you can try if you don't want to attempt some of these crazier food items. But another thing about it being buffet style is the more adventurous items. You can try a small portion to see if you're going to like them. So we're going to get into some of those more unique items that we tried right now. So Courtney, why don't you talk about something that you had that you really, really liked?
So a lot of guests who come back with reviews about their favorite things about this restaurant is the standout stews and soups. This is a little bit more unique, I think, to this restaurant. One of the ones that really stood out to me was the seafood stew. So this is kind of a little thinner tomato base. Think of maybe a minestrone, some really great big pieces of fish, some nice chunks of potato, chickpeas, and onions rounding it out with a little bit of spice. Then the butternut squash soup surprised me a little bit because I thought this was like dessert or candy. And I generally really love butternut squash, and I liked this. I just wasn't expecting it to be quite as thick or quite as sweet. And it had maybe a few different spices in there than you normally would have. I think I detected nutmeg and some cinnamon, and there might have been cardamom. I really liked this one, but it might be too sweet for some people. The third chowder, which I think if you ask a lot of guests who come to this restaurant, their absolute favorite is the chicken corn chowder. And I thought, well, it's just a chicken corn chowder. How good can it be? And when I took a bite, it was just awesome. It was so flavorful, all kinds of goodness going on, creamy, buttery, lots of different flavors and spices, not spicy, but a very hearty, thick chowder that just had a lot of flavor.
So I started off with the harira, might be how you pronounce it, I don't know. This had a very, very strong coriander or cardamom taste to it. It was really good. It was a lentil soup, but boy, it wasn't like any lentil soup that I had had before. There was definitely an overwhelming taste of, like I said, either coriander or cardamom. I don't know which one. I'm not always an adventurous eater. It was good, and I liked it, and I finished it, but it was overpowering, that extra taste. So I'm just putting it out there. If you don't like those kind of flavors, you might not like this dish. There's also a black-eyed peas dish that Courtney got for me that I felt was just a little too bland, which kind of shocked me because if any of these items aired one way or another, it was usually they aired on having too much extra flavor to it, and this black-eyed peas dish was bland, and that kind of surprised me. It was good. I would say that if I was eating it at home, I would have been fine with it, but you expect a little more when you're out eating at a restaurant, especially a Walt Disney World restaurant. I'm obviously a vegetarian, as anybody who's listened to this show knows by now, so I didn't get to check out any of the meats, but Courtney really, really liked the carved turkey. So why don't you talk about that carved turkey?
Right, so they carve it fresh for you, right in front of you, as many pieces as you would like, one at a time. And it did have a very nice rub on the skin. There was some skin that I got. And again, these kind of same type of flavors, I would say a little bit of a cardamom, but also savory. And you had your choice if you wanted to put any sauce with the turkey or some of the other meats that they had, such as a pork or I think a pot roast. This would be a horseradish, a house barbecue sauce, which had a chipotle and teriyaki base, and then a tamarind sauce as well. The house barbecue sauce was a little bit of a mustard-based sauce, kind of reminded me more of an American barbecue mustard sauce, and the description of it being chipotle teriyaki surprised me a little bit because it didn't really taste like chipotle. It wasn't spicy, but it was sweet. It was very flavorful. I liked it. And then the tamarind sauce, I was expecting to be sweeter, and I've had some tamarind chutneys in Indian dishes, and this was not like that. This was, again, more of what we think of a traditional American feeling barbecue sauce. So I liked this one too. I did not get the horseradish, but I wanted to try the house barbecue sauce and the tamarind sauce, and I liked both of them.
I know a lot of people would love to start a big meal like this with a salad, and I did get a salad. The dressing I used was the chili cilantro vinaigrette, and as the kids would say, this dressing slaps. It is so good. I know kids don't actually say that, but it's sweet with the vinaigrette, but the chili cilantro offsets that, and they had feta cheese there as well. So having some feta cheese to kind of dull those flavors a little more, it was a perfect combination for the salad. It was unique without being too adventurous. It was really good. It wasn't spicy, so if you're somebody like me who actually likes the taste of peppers and doesn't need them to be burning your mouth to the point that you can't taste anything, you actually enjoy the flavor, you're going to love this dressing because that's what you get. You get the actual chili flavor without any of the heat. I also tried all 3 of the hummuses, and they are completely and totally plant-based hummuses. I got the coriander hummus, the sun-dried tomato hummus, and then just the regular hummus. It is important to note a lot of hummus has honey in it, but because these are 100% plant-based, they do not have honey. So if you're vegan, you can do this. All 3 of them were really good. The one that really surprised me is the coriander hummus. I just wasn't necessarily expecting the flavors to go that well together, and they really, really were awesome.
So continuing to talk about some more meat items or non-vegetarian items, I do like fish and seafood, and I tried their baked salmon. It had an almond sauce, and this was very good. It was light, however, a little bit creamy, flavorful. The other thing that they seem to feature is a lot of corn dishes. There was a type of a corn bread, and then there was a corn pudding. The corn pudding gives you something a little bit unique, but not anything that's a terrible stretch. It has a little bit of sweetness, it's creamy, it kind of reminds you of maybe like a polenta or grits type of a texture. And there was a little bit of a special African jam, and we don't have the name for that right now, but you would be able to tell this dish, the corn pudding. I enjoyed that one. Then to piggyback onto the salad section, they had a nice little bowl, which I felt was very refreshing, of some smashed avocado with some pieces of grapefruit and papaya. I did kind of pick around these and eat them separately. I didn't have a bite where I tasted all 3 together, and I enjoyed eating them separately. I thought it was flavorful, refreshing. I am a fan of avocado. I'm a fan of fruit, so I enjoyed it.
I also had the avocado and fruit, and I think my only suggestion would be if you're going to have the grapefruit, make sure you dip it in a little avocado because it was strong grapefruit, and you can sort of have that bitter taste that hits the back of your mouth if you just get a big piece of grapefruit. Now we are going to move on to my favorite dish of the entire meal. I was so pleasantly surprised by this, and that's the pasta salad. This was like a traditional pasta salad that you would have anywhere in the United States on a 4th of July, except there was cumin in the sauce. And that took something that you've had a million times at barbecues all across the country and turned it into something you've never had before, and something that it felt like you were tasting a brand new dish. I couldn't get enough of this pasta salad. It was great. I had never heard anybody talk about it before when they were talking about Boma, so maybe this is just something that I really, really like. But I'm telling you, if you go to Boma, make sure you get at least a small bowl of this pasta salad. I'm pretty sure you're going to be going back for seconds if you get it at the beginning of your meal.
And then on to the desserts. Animal Kingdom Lodge is famous for a dessert called zebra domes. We had never had these before, wasn't really sure what was in these, but everybody raves about them and loves them, so we were excited to try them. Now, we did double check since Rick is vegetarian and does not eat and cannot eat gelatin, and they do contain gelatin, unfortunately. So I tried this and gave my opinion. I think it was good, but not really great. I thought it was maybe a little too sweet, and I was expecting kind of a vanilla coating with a chocolate type mousse inside, and the inside was not really a chocolate mousse. It was a little hard to describe the flavors. It was maybe a little bit more of maybe a cinnamony hazelnut, which I liked. It just did not stand out to me. Another dessert that they had was a hazelnut brownie. I liked this. I thought it was a little too sweet also, so I could only have maybe 2 bites, but it was kind of a fudgy chocolate brownie with a little bit of a hazelnut icing, and that was good. A third thing we tried was a passion fruit mousse. This was really great. I enjoyed it, and I think you really did too, right, Rick?
I thought that the base for this was a really good compliment to the very sweet and tart passion fruit, and then to have this cookie-flavored base. It was really unique, and I really enjoyed it. Now, I did not enjoy it as much as what might be my favorite dessert on Walt Disney World property right now, and that's the Kenyan coffee tarts. Oh my God, were these good. It had an intense coffee flavor, so you have to really like coffee flavor to enjoy this. But there was a little bit of chocolate to follow up that really intense chocolate flavor, and the tart was good. There was a little cream on top that was good. Seriously, for all of the talk about the zebra domes, and like Courtney said, I couldn't have a zebra dome, so I don't know firsthand. Everybody tells you that's the dessert you have to try. That's the dessert you have to try. No, this Kenyan coffee tart is phenomenal. Out of this world. Like, so good, I can't even describe in words how good this was. I think I had 5 or 6 of them. And this was at the end of an all-you-care-to-enjoy meal, so I was already stuffed, but I couldn't stop. They were so good. So, Courtney, overall, what would you say are your thoughts on Boma? I believe for an adult, the meal was $49. And then obviously we have a discount because we're annual pass holders.
My overall opinion of this dining experience and this restaurant is great. I like a lot of different flavors. It's a little bit unique, but not too out there. I felt it was a great variety. I tasted a little bit of, I think, nearly every dish. Maybe there were 4 or 5 things that I skipped, but I tried everything that I wanted to try. And I really got filled up a lot more quickly than I thought I would. But I had such a great time trying so many different things. And of course, the extremely great service that you receive.
I think my favorite part of this being a buffet-style, all-you-care-to-enjoy restaurant is, like Courtney said, that we got to try a little bit of everything. There's no way we could have had full dishes of some of these items, but we were able to just put a little bit on our plate and give it a little bit of a try. Now, I will say, doing it that way, we got full before I really realized that I had had that much to eat because I was just having tiny, tiny portions of everything. So I would suggest making a dining reservation if you're on a week-long trip to Walt Disney World to go over to Animal Kingdom Lodge, preferably on your off day where you don't have any theme parks that day, because before your reservation, you're going to want to walk around, you're going to want to see the decorations, and you're going to want to see the animals on the savannah. This is a place you could spend a few hours of your day, and we actually did spend a few hours of our day there. Courtney, thank you so much for doing another dining review with me.
Thanks, Rick. Great to be here.
This has been episode 49 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. We'll be back next Thursday with our good friend Sarah from Seattle, and we'll be talking about the nighttime spectaculars that are returning to Disneyland Park and Disney's California Adventure this spring. Until then, have a great week.